though it's like prepping and I can't see that it's doing it, it's like recording us right now. Okay, so got it. So what I was thinking for that is, sorry, I'm just gonna make sure YouTube's actually working here. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, wicked, we're good. Okay, so we're officially live. We're getting broadcast to YouTube. That's pretty cool. So, but yeah, there's like a 15-second delay. So I was thinking is I'm going to start getting like some music so I can have like music piping in. And then that way we can just like, we don't have to be like, okay, we're on. It gives us like a buffer zone to kind of get ready. And then I can like fade out the music and then, you know what I mean? So, okay. But cool. Okay. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, this is like episode 0, I guess. So we're just like kind of riffing today. So myself and Megan, thanks for joining us, or me, Megan, us, me.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always love checking in with you.
Awesome. Yeah, totally. So how's everything going? You sound like you've been at an incredibly busy last few days specifically. So this is Sunday afternoon at time of recording. How are you feeling right now?
I'm super, busy right now. And I had just popped on Instagram earlier to talk about how I'm doing changes kind of like either minute to minute or hour to hour, and that's okay. And so I talked about how emotions come and go. And so when they flow in and out, just letting them continue to flow and acknowledging them just as emotions. And then asking myself like what I want to do with that. Because right before I popped on this call, I was super frustrated. So I just kind of acknowledged it like, yeah, this is a frustrating time for me, but what do I want to do with that? Well, I want to let it pass because I want to move on with my day. So because I let it pass, I'm feeling like not too bad now that we're on this call together.
Beautiful. That's great advice. You know what that kind of reminds me of, just when you're talking like that, it seems like that's sort of what that's like the advice people give as far as like people that are starting meditation, is like just realizing there will be thoughts, there will be feelings that come up, and just don't attach to them, let them happen. And from there, that's going to, strengthen your awareness, your self-awareness. And then you're not like pushing anything down. So it's almost like, it sounds like you're doing that just like in day-to-day life, almost like a meditative frame of mind, a frame of reference, but for just everything that comes at you during the day almost, right?
Yeah, I mean, I try for sure. I think I'm more mindful of it right now, given our family circumstances with my husband's surgery, right? I knew that there'd be all kinds of emotions that are going to pop up because I'm solo parenting essentially.
Yeah,
He's had knee surgery, so he really can't be around the babies because they'll probably just injure him. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make a conscious effort to almost overly check in with myself. Like every hour, if not even sooner than that, be like, how am I feeling? How am I feeling? How am I feeling? And then I'm going to make a move based on that. Because for the most part, I think when you're a mom, like you have a bit of your day planned. So sure, I have some things I need to get done today, right? Like, feed my kids, change their diapers. And
sure.
I'm already thinking like, oh, okay, what do I want to have for lunch? But then when I checked in with myself, I was like, oh, I'm feeling really overwhelmed and frustrated right now. And so that idea that I had for lunch, let's just scrap that. And we're going to do smoothies because smoothies take like 30 seconds. And that's fine.
So
it's fine.
Cool. Like, yeah. Really good adjustments. Great advice too. So, and anybody that's not familiar with you and your family situations, you have a couple of twin girls. And how old are they right now?
They're 2.
So the terrible 2s, I guess. How have those been for you guys so far?
I feel like we're just kind of entering into that phase now because they're getting really verbal. Like it's amazing the things that come out of their mouth. Like they'll stop and they'll say, "Mama, I'm so frustrated."
Wow.
Like, okay, like let's talk about that. You're 2, but let's talk about that, right?
Yeah, right.
Now they're able to really vocalize their needs more, which is awesome, but it's also can be like intense. And so that's why I was getting frustrated around lunchtime, like smoothie time, because they were like yelling at me that they wanted this and this and this and this and this. They're just making all their needs known. So I'm like, whoa, like this is really overwhelming.
Sure. And I could see where that'd be like, on one hand, you want to be able to deal with it and you don't want to do it in such a way that you're framing the behavior that like, I don't want to hear what you need, like shutting it down either. You want to be able to accept it. By the same token, like you say, it's kind of intense at that time because you want to be able to support them at the same, on the other hand, right?
Yeah, totally. So I have to like kind of take a deep breath in those moments because I get really easily overstimulated by loud noises, and kids are pretty loud, right?
Sure.
And reminding myself that like a 2-year-old has no frontal cortex, like they don't have any part of that brain for executive functioning, so they can't regulate their emotions. They're not aware of how loud they sound, so them screaming is like completely age appropriate, but sometimes I have to stop and remind myself.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, exactly. And again, that's comes back to you checking in with yourself as much as you can too, right? Because otherwise that's just going to accumulate and then, potentially come out in an outburst of unchecked emotion, right? So
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah,
good thing that you're
totally.
great advice. So that's good. Yeah, and I mean, even more thankful for you to join today. Taking some time out of your busy schedule. You just sort of wedged it in at nap time. I get the impression, right? So
I
we're
was like,
kind of on potentially borrowed time here. So
we are on a
yeah,
little bit of borrowed time. Yeah.
that's cool. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah. So you know what, I guess the intention for this episode, sort of just like for us as behind the scenes, for anybody watching, like we're kind of getting used to doing some like live type like with visuals. We've both been doing podcasting for a bit, but adding some live content as well, as far as like the visuals and all that. So, and Megan, you have a coaching practice that you're just starting, but you're also very experienced otherwise in similar fashion. So basically what we're doing is kind of like a little introduction as far as Megan, myself, and a little bit of origin and background. And it's just a good practice for us to kind of get through the tech bugs before we have big plans in the coming weeks. So this is sort of a good way to sort of iron out any little bugs that come up. But aside from that, more or less just sort of an origin introduction for the both of us. So yeah, Megan, I'd love to hear more about I guess just your background, because you have a very extensive background. And, we met, at Save On Foods, so a local grocery retail group. And that was probably 10 years ago. So your journey, you left that company a while ago now. And let's hear a little bit about your journey. I mean, to try and cap off, 8+ years or whatever it's been in like a 5 to 7 minute whatever. But yeah,
Do you
please.
want me to take it back 10 years?
Yeah, or what,
Yeah.
just I want to hear, what okay, I'm going to start it like this. It'll be easy, make it easy for you. What led you to this line of work in the first place? When did you know that this is your calling, or did you know, was it a bit of experimentation? How did you get on this path that you're currently on?
Yeah, so came out to Alberta like probably 12 years ago with Save On Foods and was working there. I had done a bit of post-secondary education prior to coming out to Alberta. I was actually going to school for law, and part of it felt really good, and then part of it didn't really feel good. And I don't really know how to explain it, in the sense that I just didn't really feel like I was on the right path. And so my tuition was coming up for like the following year, and I just was like, I don't know what to do, like something's off. And so why don't I just take a pause, because there's no issue with that with the university I was going to. So I took a pause. Then this transfer came up for me to come to Alberta, so I came to Alberta. Working for Save On Foods was okay for a while, but again was like, this is not it, right? Like it was fine, but I wasn't okay with the fine of it. And my mom is in the social work field. She's retired now, but she was a community outreach worker for mental health and addictions for like over 20 years. And so always had that like influence in my life. My mom has always been like an activist and involved in all kinds of policies and helping people who are less fortunate and all that kind of stuff. So I was always surrounded with that. And how it came about was I was actually looking into some education resources for my partner at the time, not together anymore, but that partner, and then came across the social work program and got so much fear around it. Like I remember just reading what the program was about, and all this fear came over me, and I wasn't even going to apply, but I just was like, okay, why is this fear coming up for me? And I think it came from a place of feeling like I couldn't help people, or I wasn't good enough to help people, or smart enough to help people. Like, what did I have to offer? But I knew that where I wasn't working either. And so I kind of did it as a shot in the dark, because you had to write an essay to apply and get in. It was quite competitive too. So I did it and I got in, and here I am 8+ years later.
So cool. Do you still have the essay kicking around? Is this something you're like, oh yeah, this is the
Oh my
thing? Like it's
gosh. I don't know. I should
no.
look for it. I should look for it. Yeah. I
I
don't
wonder
know
what
if I
kind of
do
like
actually.
I wonder what kind of like energy it would have. Like if you picked it up, it's kind of like almost like the linchpin for everything, right? Like you must have
Yeah.
just killed the essay. Like you must have just been like,
I
yeah,
remember the gist of it. So
yeah.
you could choose to do like a research essay or you could do like a personal kind of story essay. And so I chose to do that. And so I just talked about my upbringing, my struggles growing up in poverty with a mom who was working 3 jobs, gave me everything besides the skin off her back, to support me and my brothers and my sisters. And so I think I talked about that experience and why I felt connected to being in a helping profession.
Mm. You know what? I think that would have a lot more impact than, some kind of like the other side of the speech, right? Or the essay rather, having your own personal story and like you have some
Yeah.
skin in the game because it already means so much to you, right? It's so super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I want to get back to what you were talking about as far as like the fear, sort of what just reading what the course itself did to you.
Yeah.
So because I know you, and especially the last like few weeks or a couple months say that we've been talking, I get the impression that's a big driver for you is just if there's something that is like overtly challenging to you and you get kind of fearful, if not nervous, like that nervous energy that can kind of go either way. It's either like fear or it's just excitement. It gives you the butterflies anyways. Is that sort of like a signal for you that this is something I should be pursuing? Is that like a signal to your intuition? Do you use that?
Mhm.
Like if it feels that way in your body, is it like, okay, this is what I'm going for? Is that something that you use as a compass kind of?
Yeah, totally. And so that experience is really like the first time that I could pinpoint something like that because I've had that experience too, even after when I finished my degree, where I had that feeling that I didn't act on it because I wasn't able to work through the fear because it's more than just butterflies for me. Like when I was thinking of applying to the program, I was like crying. I didn't want to leave Save on Foods, even though I wasn't necessarily happy either, because I'm such a creature of habit, and
Mm.
I like consistency. I like to know what to expect, and so going into this program and having taken a student loan and coming up against all those fears was really really hard for me. I was really scared of failing essentially.
Sure. Well, and even just to get back into your childhood, I mean, you sort of mentioned it in a little bit earlier there about, being raised in poverty and all that. So that is very much a part of your makeup. So for you to then go and get a line of credit and everything is so against everything that you had learned, right? It's very much out of the comfort zone, not the norm at all. It's like a dollar is worth so much. So for you to almost bet on yourself and put this extra risk involved certainly was against everything that you had learned up to that point too, right? So there's
Oh,
a whole
totally.
other degree of risk in that.
Yeah, and I had no debt at the time. Like I had already designed my life in a way that like I had money to burn. I didn't have kids at that time and I was living in a condo and my expenses were minimum, right? And so there was also a lot of like other family members and other people in my circle that were kind of questioning, like, well, why would you go into social work? Because social workers don't make anything. They're paid like minimum wage and all these ideas about what they think a social worker is made, which I'll tell you
Mm,
is not true.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I make a great living.
Nice. That's
And
good.
so it's
That's
like,
good.
so then I thought because money was such a component of that fear, that was really hard to then push through that too and continue going down this path, thinking to myself, like, oh my God, am I going to spend another 2 years in university to come out with student loans and then be paid minimum wage and not be able to pay off my debt, right?
Right.
Scary.
Absolutely. So how is your overall like vision or feeling around money? How has it evolved over specifically over your adult life? But talking about like little Megan growing up, seeing how scarce and important money is because it's like every dollar is accounted for, even in yourself. You just mentioned into your
Mhm.
early 20s, no debt. Everything's, you're very okay. You know where every cent is. So obviously you've opened up and been more flexible with it, and as a result, though, you're making more money than what you potentially thought you were going to make. So what has
Mhm.
that done to your? How do you view money? Like how has it sort of changed over the years?
Yeah. So initially, I always had that poor person's mentality, right? And I still have a little bit of that. I don't know if that'll ever go away. But even 10 years ago, it really stopped me from living. Even though I had the money in my bank, I would never spend any of that money on myself. Like getting my nails done, absolutely not. Eating out, absolutely not. Taking a vacation, absolutely not. And it's not that I was necessarily saving for anything or had any fear that something might like pop up, right? Like a home renovation, or I didn't even have any of that. It's just I needed to see that I had money in the bank. And I didn't spend a dime on anything ever. And so that took a long time to work on, and I'm still working on it. But I constantly have a mantra right now around abundance, and that I have abundance, and that I can create abundance, and that like money can come and go. And I've been through so many hard times that I think the biggest shift happened for me after my twins were born, because being on maternity leave is like really tight. And now I had two. So it was like even tighter. Like we would go through 500 diapers in a month.
Wow.
And like I breastfed and then they were formula fed, and like that was crazy expensive. And leading up to their birth, I was like, I can't do this. There's no way. Like I'll never have the money to do this. And I took 18 months maternity leave, and I think I came out on the end of it with like maybe $2,000 on my credit card, and I paid that off with like my first paycheck once I came back to work. And so
wow,
I was like, I can do this. Like I have the money, and even if I don't have the money, I have faith in myself that I can create it again.
Yeah, great answer. I think that's what a lot of people kind of forget or lose sight of. It's like if you have a track record of always paying your bills and being able to budget, and you're have a track record of being good or at least reasonable with money, there's always a way to make it work, right? It's such a thing that can get in your psyche that it's limited and it's all this kind of stuff. But I mean, twin girls, you're actually, and 18 months off, and then like you say, $2,000, and you can pay it off right away. Man, there you go. That's got to do some enormous amount of extra confidence surrounding it now. Confidence in the way that like, no matter what happens, I can handle this. Right.
Totally. Like all those things that maybe, or not maybe, they did hold me back, right? Like in the beginning where I never spent money on anything, I never did anything. I could have seen it as like a really negative part of me, but now all those kind of fundamentals of that poor person, mindset are like really positive things in my life now, because my mom taught me how to budget. My mom taught me how to shop and look for things on sale and plan for a rainy day. And she gave me like the core fundamentals of how to be financially responsible, which I don't even think most people have, because they don't teach it in school. Completely. And so I'm so thankful that I'm able to do that, honestly. And when I look at it objectively, I'd way rather be in this mindset than like the spender or the gambler or something like that.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I took this course on Mind Valley called Money EQ, and it's this guy, Ken Honda. He's like this Japanese sort of money guru, I guess. I hate to use the term guru, but you get what I mean. And he has exactly that. It's a breakdown of the, basically your mindset around money. It's 9 times out of 10, or maybe even 10 times out of 10, based on your childhood and the models that have been set for you. And it is exactly what you meant. What you said, as far as like, there's a spender, and then there's like the saver splurger, which is totally like my dad. And like, even to me to a degree, where like I'm saved, like, no, got to save. And then when it comes time for it, I'm just like, oh, make it rain. You know what I mean? I'm like, I saved, right? I saved so long. So like, now I'm just going to like splurge. Right. So, which is totally my dad. And, I guess just recognizing it. I never thought of it like that, where, so that one. And then of course the, I guess the saver, and so there's like 4 different main types, and just trying to kind of figure out where you are. And he's a lot more into like money being energy. It's like an energy exchange, as opposed to like attaching something like that to it. Right. So if you put it out with like good intentions or investing in yourself, you will get it back, because it's like, what goes around comes around, the conservation of energy and that kind of thing. So, which was super cool. And they had a bunch of like guided meditations he did on releasing different like, fears and different things around money. So it was a pretty cool course. And I'd never really viewed it as like, as an energy exchange, and kind of having the, what goes around comes around, the cyclic nature of it, as long as you're doing it with good intent, like you're supporting something or like, helping somebody out or whatever. Right. So I thought that was
Right.
pretty cool though. So
Yeah, absolutely.
cool you brought that up. Yeah. So I guess where are you now? Cause like you're, as far as in your career, like as far as like how comfortable you are, obviously it's super cool that you're looking to do some like, the one-on-one coaching. So we'll link your Instagram and your website and everything in the show notes and all that. So super cool that you've chosen to do that. Basically pretty much brand new, like 2022, you're coming out of the gates, looking for that. So, which is rad. So I guess what led you into, starting your own practice, and how does that sort of complement what you're doing in the meantime with what you're doing at work? Specifically, what are you doing for work right now as well, for everybody to know?
Yeah, so my like day job is
Yeah,
that
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
my day job is that I work as a 0.7 as a clinical educator. So I review competency of staff in my organization, and then I pick up a 0.3 FTE as a behavioral health consultant. So I work in a multidisciplinary team in some of the clinics in Edmonton, so supporting the physician. We usually have a nurse or a dietitian on staff. So I'm seeing patients primarily with a mental health concern, but we also do deal with chronic disease management as well. And my goal is to support them on behavior change. So whatever their goal is, whether it is they want to get a handle on maybe their anxiety or depression, or maybe they want to lose weight, maybe they have like unmanaged diabetes, I'm supporting them on the behavior change piece and making sure that they're, having healthy habits, mind and body, because there's such a connection between the mind and body. So doing that, and then the life coaching came around because of you, and like connecting back with you and listening to your journey. It's funny because I had always felt like, oh, I think the next step for me is probably going to be to like go to counseling. But again, it was like this feeling where I was like, but that something feels off in that. And I, again, like couldn't put my finger on it. And I've been talking about it with my mom for years, because she was like, well, what feels off about it? You'd be so good at it. And of course, that's the next step for you. And I was like, I don't know. You ever had that feeling where you're just like, that's just not it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Not it.
Yeah.
And then from talking to you, I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense, because I don't really like being prescriptive, meaning that I don't like telling people what to do. And even though in my role now, I am like consulting with a team, it still feels a bit prescriptive because it's based on a medical model, right? And so sometimes when people come into a doctor's office, they really see you as like this authority figure, and like, well, you're my doctor, so you could tell me what to do, and I'm gonna do what you tell me, even though it's not their goal. And then they don't have the success in that goal because they haven't bought into the goal, right? Whereas with coaching, it's like someone's coming to you for that support, and you're working with them to help kind of propel them forward, and you're really just like in the background supporting them, encouraging them, helping them to overcome barriers, but they're doing the work, we're not there dragging them out of bed in the morning, helping them hit their goals. They're doing that. Doing that. Whereas prior to this recent job, I was in a job prior to that where like that actually was part of our role, to call people and be like, did you do this today? It's like, oh my God, like that's just not it for me. I know some people need that support, but it's not, I don't know, like jiving for me, I guess, if you want to say that.
Yeah, no, for sure. So just about, so with your day job, the one question that came up for sure is like, so when you're talking about behavioral changes, what are you finding is sort of the most common, or some of the most common blocks that people have? Is it like, if you were to, is it self-doubt? Is it projections, like, a victim mentality? Like, what are these main things? Or is it sort of nuanced depending? I'm sure certainly there is a degree of nuance per person, but like, if you were to go broad strokes, what is sort of like the top 3 of
my gosh.
Right. Or, you know what I mean? The Mount Rushmore.
Broad strokes.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of projecting, especially when we're talking about life circumstances of people who are maybe like living in poverty or going through a divorce or having some stuff pop up, right? It's like, well, I can't be happy because this is happening. I can't be happy because I'm in debt. I can't be happy because I'm in a divorce.
Totally.
So we're working with them around that. Another one that I talk to patients about like every single day is just like self-awareness. And I really think that that's a skill. And a lot of people are not self-aware. And when I ask them, you know, like, what's a trigger for you, or what do you do to cope? I don't want to say always, but like a lot of the time, I don't know. They say, I don't know.
Oh,
And so like
interesting.
we have to go back to basics to really talk about or figure out for them what those triggers are, you know, like, because if we can't resolve that, why maybe they don't have a healthy relationship with food, or why they're using drugs and alcohol to cope with their anxiety, then like we're never going to start moving ahead, right? We have to figure out what the trigger is.
Completely. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so those are kind of, if you were to, yeah, for sure. So it's kind of like a projection, external like circumstances, to a degree of victim mentality, or just simply,
Like
I'm not sure. And that's exactly lack of self-awareness. Okay, yeah. Interesting. That's cool. So are you finding so far with the coaching? Like I completely agree with you. And I love the aspect is you're catching somebody that wants the support, the accountability, and you're essentially guiding them. They have the answers inside them, and you're just kind of guiding them to it, and helping them have the cognitive shifts. They have to get the buy-in from something that they came from inside themselves. And you're just basically asking a certain set of questions, or being curious enough to, you know, see, and there's nothing better than seeing them like have that, the cognitive shift, the aha moment. You're just like, yeah, I just love it. So it's super cool. So, just from what you were saying, it seems like that kind of checks a lot of the boxes as far as what you were looking for, as far as your just personal evolution, as you know, it's still within the same realm of like helping people and everything, but this will be the next step for you. Is that pretty early to tell early on? Obviously you just said that, a month in, right?
Yeah. It's so early.
Yeah. But still, I guess like, is that, I guess, so from my question, early to tell from, you know, obviously the external coming your way, external feedback. How about the internal? How is it feeling for you? Does it feel like, okay, I am on the right path? Is there a little bit of, how is that feeling for you, this new hat that you're trying on?
Yeah, I mean, fear has come up for sure, because if I were to go all in and be able to leave my 9 to 5 and do my own private business, you know, I don't have a company pension. I don't have all those security blankets that I have historically needed, right, in order to feel safe. But that being said, like I have those now, and I have a great paycheck now, and I have the pension plan, but I'm still not super fulfilled. I mean, there is a really fulfilling portion of it. But I definitely see people a lot right now that are coming to me because their doctor told them to, right? So they're not really there because they want to be there. And that's really exhausting work to try and like drag somebody along.
Sure.
I mean, definitely I have really great moments where I'm able to have a conversation with someone and kind of present something to them that they haven't thought about before, and then the buy-in comes. So it feels like a really big win, because maybe they were not ready to change and now they're at least contemplating changing. So that's awesome, cool. Right? But
moving the needle, right?
Yeah. But I feel like this is probably the direction I meant to go, but like you said, like I just maybe dipped my toe into it. And so I don't know if this is going to go anywhere. I'm just kind of going forward in faith and like continuing to show up every day and seeing what kind of transpires from it.
Totally. That's like my instructor, Mark England from Enlifted, says like the 2 things to do with coaching. He's like, there's only 2 steps: start and keep going. That's it. So that's what you've been doing so far. So, I mean, I just wanted to I wanted to ask the question just because you are very aware, and you say you like we talked about before, like using fear as sort of I'm on the right track. So it sounds like if you are having that, again, it is, a month in, so it's hard to tell, but you are getting some of those feelings, whereas opposed to like when you're talking with your mom about the counseling thing, there was this kind of flatlined, right? There was no up, down, all around. It was just kind of, I mean, I could, but not really doing too much for it, right? So yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
And like, so we're in February, so it's been about a month or so, or 5 weeks or something like that. I don't remember the first start date, but it's like, even in that 5 weeks, I've had to kind of push through like so many things. Because when I first entertained the idea of starting coaching, I was like, well, I'm just going to be like a general life coach, right? Like I didn't really want to like pick a niche out of fear, because I felt like if I picked a niche, then I might have to show up as a version of myself that I'm still a bit uncomfortable with.
Sure.
And I've been doing podcasts and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny because every time I've logged on to a podcast, they've had kind of a topic in mind and it's never gone that way. And that's probably common, right? But like the conversation has shifted into something totally different.
Completely.
And then I've had to like choose whether or not I'm going to show up as my authentic self in that conversation. And I've literally been like 10 steps ahead. I've been like, okay, do I actually want to answer this truthfully, or should I dance around it? Or and in that moment, I've had to work through the fear of being like, no, like I'm going to answer the question authentically. And so those questions specifically have been around my journey with motherhood and my journey with the postpartum experience.
Right.
And so now it's like, when I show up with that narrative around my own experience with motherhood, it feels really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm glad that you decided to go with that. Cause I know what you mean. Cause like there's and we'll get into it when we talk about, some of my origin stuff, but it's frightening to put it out there, but that is how you're going to really connect with people when they go, man, like Megan, I heard this, Megan McLaren was on this podcast and she just was like brutally honest and genuine about your experiences. And that really resonated with me because I'm feeling those same feelings. Right. So, there's no other way to do it. But at the same token, of course, your brain or your ego is going to be like, I kind of want to like omit some of those details.
Yeah, I kind of want to pretend like I'm like have it all together and perfect and all those other things, right?
Yeah. But I think in our line of work, it's almost like vulnerability gives credibility at the same token. You know what I mean? And it's just like, because like, it's, and look, you've gotten through it and you've come out of the other side and you're looking to help people with it. So you know what I mean? It's cool. It's neat that you're doing that. So I also want to give you props on your Instagram game. I want everybody to cast a follow your way for sure. Very good, very humorous and great uplifting messages. Really good photography of you and your family and everything. So super cool.
Thank you.
Props to you on that. And good looking website. You're getting out there with podcasts and everything. And we're going to be starting the more frequent shows like this. So super cool. But no, that's great. And thanks for sharing your basically your origins up till this point. That's awesome.
Of course. I think that's a perfect segue into now you taking the heat off me and talking about yourself.
Heat transfer. Oh, I better have a drink then. Oh my goodness.
I know. I'm like a good dry mouth now. I'm gonna take a drink.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of fun. A little YouTube live. So everybody that's watching, I guess sorry, just a quick little segue because we're kind of in an intermission, if you will. So what we're going to be looking to do actually is going to be to start doing like a daily show essentially with different themes. And I'm not going to spoil them yet but they have snappy names and they're going to be fun. It's interactive and everything. So we're going to be doing it on like Facebook Live, YouTube Live. So I haven't figured out how to get on Instagram quite yet, but I'm sure there's a way. So we're going to be basically broadcasting all these different, free content and like the ability to, for any of the listeners or viewers to come on and do some like live coaching. And, it's there'll be some kind of like game type themes along the way as well. So I'm super excited to do this. And we were just kind of collaborating on some ideas.
It'll be super fun.
Totally. So very much looking forward to that. So just that is on the way. So this is, like we say, episode 0. Just wanted to let everybody know kind of who we are and where we're coming from. So
are you ready now? Are you ready?
Good. Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
So I don't know where you want to start. Do you want to back the bus up to the first time that I like verbally assaulted you at the cheese counter, or like where do you want to go back to?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So like Megan and I met at Save on Foods, as we mentioned. And I want to say it was like maybe a couple months before I had a really bad, like my rock bottom moment of my life for sure. And we just hit it off. It's just kind of one of those things that you can tell with somebody when you usually within like a sentence.
Yeah.
I think both of us are kind of the same way where you just like pick up a certain vibe or frequencies from somebody. And there's so much in common that we pretty much identified right away. As soon as I know somebody's from BC, I'm like, oh, all good. We're going to be friends. Right. And that's just like a Canadian thing. Anybody that's like not familiar with Canada, like BC is like where Vancouver is, and it's pretty chill. Like it's a lot of like forested areas. So, it's almost like, and where Alberta is kind of like the Texas of Canada. It's a little bit more I mean, don't get me wrong. We both like Alberta, obviously, right? But
We're here. Yeah.
we're here, exactly, right? So, but it's a little bit more getting into the prairies and all that, where BC has like forests and lakes, and it's just beautiful. And I'm sure you had green belts all around where you grew up. And same with me. I grew up with like literally I could hop my fence and be in the river valley by the Fraser River. Like that's where I grew up. I always grew up right by forested areas and such. So yeah, it's just kind of like obviously that does something to you growing up, right? You're so used to being in nature. And so, yeah, every time I meet somebody in BC from BC, I can almost like tell just from having conversations. That was kind of like us. And yeah, I don't know. I always got a kick out of how, like sort of sassy you are. And you're just like funny and kind of like take no bullshit, but also super like genuine and
I've calmed down a lot in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Let's
definitely.
back it up. I was like 21, 22.
Yeah, that's true. But by the same token, you came off very like mature for 21 or 22, because like some of the 21 or 22-year-olds, and what I would have been 30. So would have been still like in the like the Valley Girl stuff. And you were I don't think you've ever had that phase, but if you did, you way past it, right? So yeah, so we, just I worked in the bakery and you were in the deli, so we had fairly constant interactions as far as like on a weekly basis, saw each other like 3 to 5 times depending on shift overlap, and just got to know each other quite well that way, and just like work acquaintances. And basically what happened is I had a kind of a train wreck time in my life, and I remember you reached out to me, and it was really unexpected, and I thought it was super cool of you, and it really meant a lot to me. It still does. And you were just checking on me. You're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I think you just said that. You're just like genuine, like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, not really, And and it was just like you kind of were one of those people that just sort of like. I remember one night too, like when I was I was closing the store and I was just so out of it, and you just like stayed with me, and we're just like, I'm like closing the store, and you're just making sure, if nothing else, you're kind of like my guardian angel. Like I'm just like I still got to stay focused, and I got to go make sure I'm checking all the doors and all that, and you're just making sure that I'm like and making me laugh and all that, because I was just so I'm sure I was so low vibration. I've never felt. I rarely get depressed, but that was like beyond. I was just done. I really shouldn't have been at work. And shortly thereafter, I went on a 5-week leave of absence, right, to kind of dry out, like, just to get the truth out there. I was very heavily drinking at the time, daily. Like I was probably half cut, or, at the job, or like as soon as I was driving home, doing a lot of this like drinking and driving, and just a bunch of BS that obviously I'm not super proud of. But that's just the way I was coping. So, so that was kind of going on. And honestly, I was about out of the 5 weeks that I had to kind of get my shit together. The first 2 weeks I was still drinking. I'm just like, man, like I got to do something here at some point. And basically what happened was my buddy Brent, who I'd kind of had a falling out with, he was in the band and we were like brothers, like we just, but we kind of had a falling out because he had gotten into hard drugs, cocaine and heavy drinking too. He was actually my roommate for the longest time, and he moved out, and he owed me some money for back rent, and so we just weren't talking. So anyways, we finally kind of laid down the hatchet, so to speak, and around that time, and I remember he offered to go to an AA meeting with me, and if I'd done it myself, I thought, just showing up to the parking lot and just kind of feeling like the energy of being near an AA meeting was enough for me. But he was with me, and like I even tried to do that. I'm like, dude, I'm good. You know what? Like this is a big enough step for me. I think I'm good. I think I'm cured. And and Brent is just such like a jovial guy, and he just has this like awesome smiley. Like, no, man, it's all good. Like, so he went through NA and AA, so he took me to an AA meeting that he knew everybody. He's like, no, everybody's friendly in there. We'll go in together. And I was like, oh man, okay, let's do this. And we went in. And he was like this quasi celebrity. Everybody's like Brent, and people from all ages, and everybody knew him. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool, really cool energy, right? And then we sat down, and I remember the guy started doing like the opening read, and yeah, I still kind of get emotional when talking about it. Like I literally felt like weight removed from my
Mhm.
shoulders and my neck. That's where I hold my stress. And I
Mhm.
literally felt it leave. And I was
Wow.
just like, it was profound. And the rest of the meeting, I just kind of was in that like transformed state, like kind of in a daze. And I left and I was like, I think that actually like worked. I think that actually resonated with me. And I went home and I was living with Justin and Julie at the time. And she's like, where were you? I'm like, yeah, I was at an AA meeting. She's like, really? Because, all your friends, especially when they're drinkers too, they're like, they just want, okay,
They're like,
you're
you're
going through it.
fine.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going through a rough time. You're fine though. Right. And so they were kind of shocked that I even gone. And I was like, yeah. And I think I feel different now. And then I think the next day or within a couple of days, I went to Vancouver. My brother lives in North Van. And usually like the first thing that we would do would just go to the pub and get a, pitcher of beer. But mom had given him a heads up. I got to give a shout out to my mom too, because she came out during that same time when like the right before I started my leave of absence, and just helped me get my shit together. I don't know if you remember, I had like the long hair and I went out for the
I do
haircut and she got my
totally
glasses and all.
remember.
Yeah. So she kind of got my shit together and helped me navigate like the whole paperwork thing, because I was not in of mental state to be able to navigate all the pages of paperwork to be able to make sure that I was getting paid while I was off. I didn't even care about that at that time. I just wanted to be out of there. So she helped me with that. So big time, shout out to mom for like leaving her house and coming in and basically taking care of her 30-year-old son. That was just like a shit show at that point.
Moms are the best.
Oh man, she's awesome. Yes, so cool. And funny, another thing we have in common, my mom was a like social worker, is a retired social worker now as well. So cool.
Yeah,
super cool. So I went to Vancouver and my mom had already tipped off Josh, my brother, that kind of what was going on. And my brother was just like, as soon as I met him, he's up in North Van, so fly in and then you take the Sky Train up and the C bus, which is super cool, the C bus up to North Van, and he meets me and he kind of gives me he's like, so I hear what's going on and like we'll go for dinner, but we're not having any beers. And at that point I could have gone either way. Like if he hadn't heard anything, I was like, even though I'd already had 2 or 3 days of sobriety and a couple of AA meetings,
right,
I probably would have, because I'm like,
sure.
the justification. I'm like, well, it's a different city. It's different. When I go back to Edmonton, then I'll clean up. You know what I mean? Your brain justifies, right? And I was like, that's cool. Thanks. That's actually what I needed to hear. I was so easily swayed at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another big turning point. So that was like the turning point number 2, I guess it was AA, and then Josh, saying no. And then I found AA meeting like literally a block from his apartment. So I just started going there every morning, and I go there every evening, and I went down to the North Shore, like Lonsdale Key, grab a coffee, just walk around like the North Shore, which is just beautiful. You get the skyline of like the mainland, like from across the way, and just felt different and like allowed myself space. That was the first time I really figured out what like staying present meant, because I was always either rehashing something from the past and being all hard on myself, or damn, I should like, what next time I'll do this, or super worried about the future and just going, oh, like, I was never really taking the time to be like, hey, like I'm in Vancouver right now. I got a coffee in my hand. I'm looking across to the skyline. That's what I'm doing right now. And just, it was this huge cognitive shift that happened for me at that period in time. And I just like, I had this ego dissolve. Like I just because that's the only way I could describe it. It's like I hit like a rock bottom, and there was just no more, like my ego's like, there's basically like, I got nothing, And so I just felt this like toad, right? And it was just, so I just had this like moment of completely shifting. And so I stuck with the AA meetings for the rest of the 2 weeks, and then went back to work. And honestly, work was challenging because there's so many triggers at work, and people like, you're so reactionary because there's so many moving parts. So that was very challenging for me. And just worrying about what people think. I mean, as much as we all, claim or hope that we don't have a fear of judgment, like I do have a fear of judgment. So I was afraid that, I let people down and all that, which wasn't true. But like, coming back, there's a lot of anxiety, and I wasn't sure how it was going to go. And, there was people that you know, it's fine, whatever. It's their business, not mine, that
Mhm.
wanted to talk about and speculate what I was doing. And, you know,
Yeah.
and it's fine. It's okay. It's all good. So yeah, I went back to work, and I ended up being clean and sober for 3 years, 3 months, and like 3 days or something like that. It was, I had it down like 1,188 days. And, so really good. And then basically what happened is like my drummer, Brendan, had his wedding, and I was one of the groomsmen. And it was like every time something was coming around the table, it was like, here, have a coffee. And there's like Kahlua in the coffee. And I'm not blaming, trust me, but it's just, that was the circumstance that was there. Right. So,
And like you didn't know it was in the coffee?
no. So I
So
took
then
a
you're
sip.
like
I'm like,
sipping, you're like, oh shit, yeah.
right. But having said that, what I should have done has been more upfront about, hey, I can't drink.
Mhm.
And I was always like that guy. But I think towards that stage, I was starting to get to the point where I'm like, I kind of want to try moderation again. So I think
Yeah, I remember that time because I
did you?
remember
Yeah.
I remember connecting with you. Do you remember we went to the gym together?
Yeah. I do remember that.
Probably
Yeah.
haven't been there since, but anyways. And I
Yeah.
remember asking you, and I remember
Yeah.
you being like, "Oh, I'm like drinking socially or whatever." I don't think I like said
Yeah.
anything, but I was just like,
Yeah.
"Okay, like I'll
Yeah.
support you, like however you need
Yeah.
me to."
For sure. For sure. So, you know, and then you experiment with that, and it's so funny because you're just dressing up the same thing. You're just dressing it differently. So for me, it was like, well, because it was always before, it was like I'd figure out, like I got hospitalized for drinking when I was 25. I had acute pancreatitis. And
Mhm.
so coming out of there, I'm like, well, you know what? That's the end of my whiskey drinking days, but I can drink vodka because it's clear, and beer is
Right.
beer, right? So a beer you can moderate. Nobody gets like hospitalized from beer. So, you know, within 24 hours of being released from the hospital that I was in for 3 days, I'm drinking beer, right? It's just ridiculous. So, so same thing for this, like for moderation, I'm like, you know what? No more Lucky Lager. I'm going to get this craft beer that everybody's talking about. And I'm only going to have like one at a time. I'll put one at the fridge and then have the, you know, the other 11 in a closet nearby. And, you know, within a day, I'm like grabbing them out of the closet,
Okay, like I'll just put it
piss
in the
warm.
closet.
And yeah,
Yeah.
right. So just breaking all the rules again. And I'm just like, man, I remember there's one specific incident that I had, not my finest moment, but I was like, this is my attempt at moderation. I had a day off, and usually if I don't have too much going on for the day off, like my idle hands thing is a big trigger for me, where I'm just like, I got some extra time. Yeah, I've been doing good. Let's get some beers. Like I deserve to relax a bit, right? So I ended up getting like a 2-liter bottle of like Growers, I think.
Cider?
Yeah. So I'm like, whatever. This isn't too bad. This is just like a 2-liter of cider, like whatever. And okay, so I'm yeah, right. So I had the drink number one. I poured it out, and I'm having it. I think I was in the hot tub, and yeah, I was in the hot tub, and I was about halfway through the drink, and I had a voice in my head that I don't really identify as my self-talk. Like it was a voice. And it was like, if you keep doing this, you're going to kill yourself. And I was like,
Whoa.
interesting. So I had a really bad, like sort of panic attack after. Yet I continued to drink the 2-liter, and kind of got drunk. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? So yeah, that was hard. That was hard for me. And then, you know, that was like pretty early on. And I continued to, you know, to attempt, you know, weekends only. And then weekends are like 4 days. I'm like, wow, that's, you know, close enough. That's like the 2 days coming out of the week, you know, in the justifications. And then so finally it's coming up on 3 years ago now. I had a pretty rough, ugly, you know, not my finest moment weekend that included like hard drugs and you know, drinking again, like way too much, and smoking cigarettes, which I would long since quit. I ended up smoking cigarettes, and I'm just like, what again? Like, what am I doing? I remember we took a bunch of bottles or bags of bottles to get to the recycle depot. There was like 12 of them, and just the feeling of like tearing them open, and it's like all the same type of beer and stuff spilling out, and then we went and grabbed grabbed like lunch at like one of the local pubs, and of course got beer with the lunch, and the beer was just like that gross like early tap, like the kind of skunky beer, like where they just changed the tap. I'm like, this is fucking brutal. And that's like at the end, and it was right before I left the next morning to go to my dad's celebration of life. He had passed away just out of nowhere almost. And yeah, I had to drive back home, and I hadn't been to Prince George in forever. And I went with my brother, and I hadn't been back to Prince George with my brother in 20 years, which is freaking crazy to think. And I wanted to be at my best for that. And there's a bunch of family that we hadn't really seen for a while because Josh hadn't talked to my dad in 11 years before he passed away. They never reconciled. And so there was just a lot of like, you know what I mean? I wanted to be the best I could be. So the morning I left for Prince George, I had like 2 beer left. I always leave myself a couple of beers. So for my hangover, the hair of the dog, right? So I had one, and I remember just looking at the last one. And this is granted right before I leave for an 8-hour trip. And it's like 9 a.m. I had a beer. I had this other one. I'm like, fuck this. Like, no, I am done now. And I just dumped it. And then the whole drive out there, I just felt this like horrible empty dread like I've never felt before. And I recorded it, and I'm glad I could never listen to it because it was like, you know, bordering on like suicidal ideation and just really dark. But I needed to get it out of me, right? So I got it out of me, and then I did like a speech that I would do for my dad and everything, and then I kind of like connected the dots. I'm like, okay, so my dad was a big drinker, and that was a big source of like anytime that we had disagreements is because one or both of us have been drinking. So I decided that day that was it. And that was like, you know, when you can attach something to something greater than yourself, it's a real good motivator. So that's all I needed. And yeah, and you know what? It was like I met Josh at the Prince George Airport, and we had this crazy, it reminds me of like, I don't know how familiar you are with like Wes Anderson movies, like Life Aquatic. And anyways, so it's always like Owen Wilson and like Adrian Brody, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
So those two guys, and they have great chemistry, and it's always based around like an estranged father. Like I get the impression Wes Anderson, the director, has like some kind of father issue of some kind.
Right.
So I kind of felt like we were in like a Wes Anderson movie, and we were like going back to like where we grew up. We went to the elementary school, and it's like all these things that we hadn't seen in 20 years. We stayed at this hotel it used to be called Esther's Inn. And it was like a jungle themed hotel. So you go in there and like, it's like a theme room out of Fantasyland Hotel, but the whole hotel is like that. And it had water slides. Sweet. Yeah, it was awesome. And I was like, I wonder if that thing's still around. Cause like mom back in the day, same thing. We were like living kind of just around or below the poverty line. So instead of going to big fancy trips, we would just go to a hotel in Prince George. And so we go to Esther's Inn because it's like jungle themed. It got water slides. It's super cool. Right. So yeah, we went there, and it was like, it's called the Super 8, but they didn't unjunglify it. So there's still all the jungle. So it's super cool, right? We just like, it was like completely going down a trip down memory lane going, man, we haven't been here together in like 20 years. And it was super cool for my brother because like he was, you know, he said he did it for me, and I believe he did, but I also think there was, because my brother's pretty like stoic, and he doesn't necessarily get overly emotional, but he actually thanked me for being there for him for that as well, because there was a lot of like, he didn't know if it was safe for him to be there because he thought there'd be a lot of family going, kind of like, why didn't you talk to dad? You hurt him very badly. And there was more than I thought there was going to be. I told him, don't worry about it, but there was a bit of that. And, you know, so it was pretty brave that he went. So it was just one of those things. I'm like, you know what, this is just that energy that I got from that and the meaning that I could attach to it. I'm like, okay, this is, and then, yeah, I haven't looked back since.
So that was 3 years ago.
3 years ago. So it'll be 2018. It would have been, or sorry, 2019. Yeah, 2019, because he passed away in 2018. 2019, April 8th. So that's coming up, and that'll be my 3 years. And honestly, this one feels more, I had always in the back of my mind, I was very proud of myself for that first 3-year sobriety stretch. But I always had there was some unfinished business, I guess, where I was like, I was missing that exclamation point on life. I know now that at some point I was going to try moderation, and now I've tried moderation, and now I'm like, I just can't even imagine. It's like one of the last, or smoking a cigarette or any of that kind of stuff. It's just not me at all. So that's I guess the backstory that has led me to essentially what I'm doing now. I guess that doesn't, that's more of
where was the shift though? So you go back to Save On.
Yeah. Okay. There. Thanks.
And then it's like, where were you like, no, like that? Cause you were
right. Thanks. Yeah.
Had a great job, great income, right? Like all absolutely on paper looking good, but where was it like? this isn't me.
For sure. No, good. Thanks for getting me back on track. So it's so Save On Foods, I got hired when I was 16 back in Prince George. And there was about a year and a half when I lived in Calgary, there was no Save On Foods. So overall, like close to 23 years was with Save On Foods, and I turned 40 last summer. So basically, yeah. So I'll back it up to last spring. So spring of 2021. And I'd had this feeling for about a year and a half, and I didn't know how to articulate it. I didn't really know where it was coming from. I just remember seeing certain things, images, hearing stories about certain people would have this really strange effect on me. Strange in the fact that like I would start getting emotional. Like I remember seeing, I've been telling you about like Kyle Cease, and he has this documentary called The Illusion of Money. And it's basically all about like getting over the, like, why are we having money prioritized over our gifts and everything. I just remember nobody even spoken yet, but just the music that was setting the tone, and watching him kind of get his, like, they kind of do a behind the scenes thing of him like getting his makeup on, and you can just tell him like he's getting ready to, start the documentary. And he did something funny, like because he's a comedian, right? So he's a transformational comedian. And his first book that he did is called I Hope I Screw This Up. And it's just a picture of him with like this nice suit on. And he's got paint all over it, and just like, and he's just like got a shit-eating grin. So the people, it looks like the makeup lady's all pretty much all done and they're ready to go. And then he just grabs this like can of paint and dumps it on himself, and then like looks up at him. And I just, for whatever reason, that got me like emotional. I don't even really know why. And there'd be just be like moments of like, I guess when you get into like the hero's journey, like somebody that's like, come back from a rock bottom moment and is kind of like rebirthing or reborn. I would get like super, like I'd have this like I'd have to like control my emotion. I'd start tearing up a bit. And I'm like, okay, something's going on here. Like it's not beyond like me just thinking it's a cool story and it's motivating. Like it's something is coming out from within me.
Yeah, like when I just envisioned that, like, so I'm envisioning him like putting the paint on. I just envisioned him being like, I don't want to be this person in the fucking white, in the suit and the white shirt, right? And like,
sure, yeah.
I swear, like when I went through my kind of like breakdown into getting help after I had postpartum depression, that's what I was saying to myself. Like, I don't want to be this fucking person that pretends like I can manage everything and I'm perfect and can handle everything alone. Like, it was exhausting to be that person.
Yeah. Interesting. No, that's a good take. Yeah, I didn't even think of it like that, but yeah, completely. Just the imagery for that, for sure. That's super cool. No, thanks for pointing that out. So yeah, that's basically what it was. It was like, if you wanted to talk about like intuition or this thing's coming up, there we go. That's pretty much all it was. It was just a feeling. And I'm like, I have to get to the stage where I can at least articulate what this feeling is or identify what it is. But to your point, I mean, I'd made the most money I had ever made at Save On. I was assistant store manager for like 6 years, like a 10-year assistant store manager, kind of getting to the stage where it's like, you'll be start getting looked at as like a store manager, which is like 6 figures. And 40, technically, I mean, my like the prime of life, like my earning prime and all that. So I'm like, if I can just hold out for at least even another 5 years and make bank, like Darcy and I aren't going to have kids, I'll be in a really good spot. But I'm like, as soon as I even thought that, I'm like, there's something wrong about this, because I'm justifying staying there, A, and B, the thought of 5 years, I just felt like a concrete, like shield came on my body. I felt like trapped. I felt slow.
Just suffer through this for another 5 years. Probably sounded like another 100 years. Like,
it did. Even 5. And like at the end of the day, it's going to be more than 5. And then I was like, okay. And then after 5, I can step down, and then I can be like a receiver for like 5 years. And then after, I'm trying to plan it out. And I'm just like, it did not seem appealing to me at all. So what I did is I just took like a sabbatical. And it doesn't happen very often. And I on one hand, I understand why people don't do it. Like, it'd be very challenging for you to do it because you have kids, right? So I have that freedom, so I have that luxury. So that part is not lost on me. But by the same token, I'm still kind of surprised at more people that aren't in a situation like you with the kids that just don't do it. And everybody's trying to like compartmentalize it. Like, are you okay? Are you sick? Or I mean, like, no, I just need some time away. I just need to take a break. And it's
Yeah.
a lot bigger in like
It's
Europe.
like, how dare you? How dare
Yeah.
you ever take a pause from life?
Right. Getting like off the treadmill. It's like a grinder culture and you got to work 60 hours a week and all. I was like, no, you don't. So, so I just took some like 6 months off. I got approved for that. And I didn't really know. I just figured recalibrate, and just do some stuff I hadn't really had a chance to do before and that kind of thing. And I remember the morning one, I woke up, I'm like, I'm not going back. And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? It was one of those like really powerful voices that felt like outer worldly, like it was me, but it was also, it was just the finality of it. And it was so vocal. I was like, whoa, wow, where did that come from? And so then I basically did everything I could not to go back. I tried so many different things. I got into like drop shipping. I took my coaching certifications, and looking back, I was hard on myself because of like, how can you not make this work? Like, so I was having big time self-doubt issues and self-worth issues towards the end specifically. Cause I'm like, man, you had your chance, you blew it. Now you got to go back to the job again and all this. And I was really getting hard on myself. But now I have a completely different outlook because I went back for the last 4 months, and honestly, it felt good. It was like, there was a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of unfinished business. And I had a chance to say goodbye instead of just kind of not coming back, which would have been how it would have been otherwise. And got to work with some great people and honestly try and integrate this new person that I've become into my old story and see how kind of challenging that was and how the worlds really collided. And you know what, there was still overall, it was great. I found you can do like short little bursts of integrations because it takes so much focus. You have to be incredibly aware of every word. You almost have to speak with a speech impediment because otherwise you're just going back into that like kind of negation riddled, or getting into gossiping or whatever. And I was like, no, this isn't me anymore. So you have to really kind of take some pauses. Right. But yeah, I had some great times though. Like I went back and got to be the one thing I never thought I was going to do again, because I did come back in a step down role, was assistant store manager. I didn't want to do it anymore. I found the job to be just laden with distractions and just your anxiety is always just kind of here and you get frustrated really easy. It's very reactionary as opposed to, having a chance to respond. Right. So, and that's not who I wanted to be anymore, but I ended up doing it. I ended up doing it for 6 weeks at the busiest time of year through Christmas, like out in Spruce Grove. It's not even, like some of the drives are like literally 70 plus minutes to get there one way, just because it's like the freezing rain. And if you told me back in my leave of absence that I was going to do that, I'd be like, oh no, like tell me you didn't do that. But it was a great experience. Right. So again, just being open and kind of following what life gives you as well is often so much better than what you're trying to control it to be. I'm like, no, I want this. And you don't even know what you need or want until it's upon you and you try it on, right? You think you do, or I should specify, your ego thinks it does. Right. So I had some great experiences. I went back to Londonderry right before the store shut down, and it was so cool because like all these people, I'd worked there for about 9 months and had a year between going back, and like, man, I was like so welcomed. And everybody's like, it really felt like I had made a difference there. And everybody was like, so that's what I mean by unfinished business. It was just nice to see everybody and kind of almost do like a retirement tour and like, like kiss retirement, right? Yeah, I kind of like this. And then, like the last store, I mean, I don't want to talk ill will, but it was not the right fit. And it was totally not the same. In fact, full circle, it was like the store that you and I met at Baseline Insurance Park.
I think that's pretty cool.
Like,
serendipitous, right?
It is. Yeah, it is for sure. So that was super cool. And I think there was something about that. I haven't been able to, I'm only days
detached from it.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm still kind of processing that. But I think there's something about why I ended at that store, because that was my store where I just had the shittiest time of my life as well.
Cool.
So, yeah.
It's so cool.
So, and having said that too, was I'm actually, because we're talking about the reframing and things of that nature here. I'm actually feel grateful that it wasn't the right fit, because otherwise I could have just kept trying this like overlap of like, yeah, save on, I can do this for another couple of years while I'm working on my coaching. And it was just kind of one of those things. Like I got into this business mentoring program that started right after I finished my level 2 and lifted. And the level 2 and lifted call was just so fucking good that by the end of it, I'm like, this is what I'm doing the rest of my life. I'm going to quit tomorrow. And I typed up the letter and I had my back pocket. I'm glad I didn't, but I was so close to doing it. And anyways, I was there for another couple of weeks and I got into the business mentoring program. And I'm just like, you know what, this is what I'm doing. And, and this is how I feel about it. And yeah, like this is the rest of my life. So I'm fortunate that like had Save On, or specifically the baseline, you know, had it worked out a little bit better, I would have probably second guessed it or just been like, yeah, no, I do have those feelings, but they can wait. I'll just,
you would have just taken the safe route probably,
totally,
right?
Totally. And you know what, like there's nothing that compares to the freedom now that I feel versus, okay, I'll use it. This is incredibly dramatic analogy, but I'm going to use it anyways. And you'll get what I mean. So when I was on my leave of absence last summer, it was like probation. Like I was out of prison. And again, like I'm not saying Save On's a prison. I'm so fortunate for my time there, but I'm just using it as the analogy. The framework is that I was out of the yard. I was out of prison, but I still had to check in. And I still, at the end of the day, I knew I had to go back. Right.
Yeah. You had the ankle monitor on.
There we go. Right. And again, and like, I want to be very clear. I don't use the analogy that Save On's actually like prison. Right. But you get what I mean, as far as the analogy goes. And now this one, it's like, I'm out, and it feels exhilarating, and it feels exhilarating in a way. And I'll be very specific about it. And it's really cool. Is that, for example, I always felt like there's two versions of me, in a few different ways. I'll start articulating by as far as like there was the drinker me and the sober me, right? So now they've kind of dissolved and it's just me. So I'm using that same approach with me, I guess, out in the workforce now. Cause like there used to be the Save On me where I was like, I had to kind of toe the line. I had to like represent what an assistant store what I believed an assistant store manager was or is. Yeah. And it's often based on what I thought other people thought an assistant store manager is or should be. Right. So there's a lot of like expectation and some true, some not true, but either way, there was a lot of expectation and pressure I put on myself. So I had two separate lives because I didn't like combining my creative side and my band side. I always felt very awkward trying to mesh them. And I always felt like the people that you don't want asking you about it were the people that would always ask you about it. Like, oh, I hear you're in a band, eh? I'm like, oh yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, well, what do you do? Oh yeah, I bet you sing, like that kind of stuff, right? And I'm just like, yeah, I sing. Yeah, okay. So now that's all like just gone, right? And I don't know. I just didn't know. I've never had that. So having this like feeling of like that's dissolved now too, and it's just me now. I feel like the creation, my creation is like the sky's the limit, and I don't have this like strange governor that I put on myself. I'm taking responsibility for it. Like I wasn't because like, oh, I'm worried about what people think, so I'm blaming them. I'm worried about what people think because I'm judging myself at the end of the day. If you want to like inward point the projection, it was me. It was my issues. But that is kind of dissolving, or at least starting to dissolve, because I'm like, I don't have those two personalities kind of battling or trying to like, you know what I mean? Keep away from each other. So I feel like more whole as a person now, and as a creator, and as a, you know, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, that's kind of, that's, absolutely. So it's super exhilarating. So one of my main hangups that I identified right away was I was always awkward about posting stuff on social media. And my main excuse that I was telling myself or others was that I didn't want to have to be judged. I didn't want to go to work and be like, oh yeah, I saw you're like, you got a coaching practice, eh? But the funny thing was like towards the end of my tenure, and everybody's asking me, by the time the word gets out, they're like, the first question is, oh, so what are you going to do then? So by the end, I'm like, you know what? I got to lean into this. Like, it is what I'm going to do. Why am I beating around the bush? So then I do like the whole like lean up, wow, you know, I got a coaching practice now, blah, blah, and just kind of like practice like whatever it be, just have fun with it, right? And be humorous about it and all that. And then it's just sort of carried over. So I got on TikTok now and getting into Reddit, and I don't have this like inner judgment that other people are judging me or that I have to explain myself. And it feels incredibly liberating. And I didn't expect it. Well, I guess I didn't know that was going to happen or be such a benefit or side, not even side. It's so side just kind of dismisses it. It's an incredible benefit, or it's a very freeing feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now.
That's so awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think that the timing of it just was the way that it was supposed to be. Right.
So,
and
yeah,
I honestly can say that everything that's happened in my life has been not usually on my own timing. It's been like on the universe's timing, and it's worked out the way that it's needed to, whether it was because some things had to fall into place for that to happen, or because maybe I needed to do some work in order for me to actually like move forward on it.
For sure.
Kind of prepare myself for that shift. So yeah, I think it's totally worked out the way it was supposed to.
Completely. And thanks. And I don't know if it's the same for you, but like it's there's been quite a few things that have happened in my life that like if you had told me it was going to work out that way, like if you told me, okay, this is going to happen, I'll be like, okay, no, I could see that happening, but how did that happen? And it ends up being this like, whoa, this like big kind of zigzaggy story. I was like, holy shit. Well, yeah, I would have thought it would just been like this happened and it got there, but no, you have, and to your point, it's kind of like these inner lessons. It's like the actual Eastern version of karma, as opposed to like the Western, like, yeah, what goes around comes around. We tend to sort of like dumb it down, I guess, but with the karma is like, it's these lessons that will keep showing up in your life until you are able to dissolve them or show, to your point, it's like, okay, it doesn't bother you anymore. Right. Yeah. You have to learn the lesson and realize that it's not affecting you. And it's not the ego thing. It's not the ego like, oh yeah, I'm fine. No, I'm good. I'm over it. I've learned my lesson. It's actually, it doesn't physically, you know, you can breathe and be like, I'm cool. Like I'm actually over it. Right. So that's for sure. No, it's cool.
That old saying, right? Of like what resists persists. And like even in my own like kind of transformative journey, that was the whole kind of crux that was like preventing me from moving forward. It was like I didn't really want to move forward. I wanted to resist having to change at all, which is like completely irrational. But when you're someone who likes the kind of the mundane, I know what to expect type of life, the idea that you have to become a completely different person, or maybe you think you have to become a completely different person, can be really anxiety inducing.
Yeah. So that's be kind of a cool topic to sort of put a bow on this with, is this like, so the whole idea is like when we both found out like Tony Robbins, and he's a big like he didn't come up with the theory, but he's a big I guess supporter or talker about her of the 6 key human needs. And it's so fun because within those there's so many dualities. Specifically with certainty, we like to be able to like, know what's coming up, we see what's coming. And then the other side of it is variety, or like uncertainty in a sense, right? So it's weird that somewhere in the middle there, and everybody has a different like level of comfort with it. The spice of life is like spontaneity and uncertainty.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then somewhere in there is like this arm wrestling match between your true sense of self and your ego that's trying to micromanage everything that's happening. And to your point, like, I'm not going to change, things will change around me, but it's completely not the truth. So yeah, it's like, it's interesting. I thought it'd be an interesting kind of topic to wrap it up with, is like, yeah, it's so funny that like human beings crave both certainty and uncertainty almost like simultaneously. And then it's kind of like, how do you navigate that, right?
I think that's the biggest like question for most people, is about how to find that balance in life, right? Because they're either in a place of fear where they're not going to experience any uncertainty, but then are they really experiencing life?
Yeah.
Or they're in a place where they're like completely irrational, impulsive, everything's uncertain, there's no sense of balance in their life, and they're, can't maintain a job or relationship. So it's like, where do you find that middle ground so that you can create a life that kind of ticks those boxes for you, because I think everyone's levels will be a bit different, right? You know, how
Completely.
I want to experience uncertainty might be a little less than you or whoever.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what it comes down to, right? It's so nuanced because like that's the gray area. There's like
Yeah.
there's a lot in there and it depends day to day, honestly, for some people, right? So, but yeah, super cool. I don't know, great conversation here. Thanks for your time. I'm sure what are
Oh,
we
of
at?
course.
120. So
My
I don't
kids
know
are
if
probably awake.
okay. All
That's why I
right.
was like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's trying. I thought your ears were getting. I'm like, oh, your
oh,
ears
I'm
are
like,
getting.
do I hear
Yeah.
your children crying?
Nice. Okay. Wait, that's what. So when you start going like this, it's like, okay, that's like the look for the kids. Wicked, awesome. Thanks, Meg. Well, have a good rest of your day. And this is
Of
super
course.
super cool thing to have done. And just anybody watching, thanks for watching this. And we'll put our like social media accounts and
Yeah,
everything
absolutely.
in the show notes and more where this came from. So any
Until
final
next
words from
time.
you? Yeah,
Just
next
until
time.
next time. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
always awesome conversation with you. So I can't wait
totally.
to do
Yeah,
it
and
again.
same.
And hopefully, if anybody was listening, they took something out of the conversation.
I think so. I think as well. Yeah. So thanks everybody. And thanks, Megan.
See you.
Bye. And